Yes, I want to thank you for being present in class today. Yes, we are talking about the uterine tubes. We are trying to describe the anatomy of the uterine tubes, and we are saying in shape they are tubes. But we are saying that the lumen communicates with the cavity of the uterus perially and peritoneal cavity perially. So when we talk about the size of the uterine tubes, the length of each tube is approximately 10 centimeters. When we talk about the lumen, it is 3 millimeters. And the thickness, we should know that it is like that of an ordinary pencil. The uterine tubes are not so big. They are not too big structures. We are saying that the thickness is that of an ordinary pencil and their lumen is just 3 millimeters. So when you talk about the gross structure, this is when you have to describe the parts of the uterine tubes. The uterine tubes. So this is a diagram of the uterine tubes. We have an interstitial portion here. We have an isthmus. We have a part known as ampulla. We have the infundibulum. And then we have the fimbria. That is the fimbria. So that is the gross structure of the uterine tubes. And we need to know that this interstitial portion is measuring 1.25 centimeters. 1.25 centimeters. Then the isthmus is measuring 2.5 centimeters. The ampulla measures 5 centimeters. The fundibulum is 1.25 centimeters. And you should know that the narrowest part of the tube is known as isthmus. Isthmus is the narrowest part of the tube. And this is it. The interstitial portion is that part next to the conua. The isthmus is the narrowest. Then the widest part of the uterine tube is known as ampulla. The work of the fimbria is to engulf the ovum or oocyte in case it is ovulated out. That is the gross structure of the uterine tubes. So when we talk about the microscopic structure of the uterine tubes, we know that it is made up of a lining of ciliated epithelium. The uterine tube is made up of ciliated epithelium in its inner lining. Then it has what we call a muscle structure. By the way, people, uterine tubes are also made up of muscles, much as they are small structures or small organs. Then it has a connective tissue that supplies it. So the lining of ciliated epithelium is the inner layer. It has the four cords from inside out. I told you when I'm teaching, I always teach you from a structure inside to the structure outside of that organ that I'm talking about in obstetric anatomy. It has the lining of ciliated epithelium, which forms a lining of the tubes, and this lining aids passage of the ovum to the uterus. Now, this epithelium that is ciliated is arranged into folds known as pleci. Those are the folds that are found in the uterine tubes. And the work of the pleci is to sweep, because it is ciliated, it sweeps all the substances that are passing through the uterine tubes. And it sweeps it peristylically, like that. So that is the innermost lining. So in case a sperm is passing through the tube, it passes it peristylically. And when the ovum is also passing, it sweeps it through the tubes in a peristaltic movement. A layer of connective tissue. The epithelium has to be supplied, the cilia have to be well supplied. So the next layer is a layer of connective tissue. Then we have a muscle coat, which is arranged into 4 layers. We have the circular muscle fibers, which are numerous near the fundibulum, and then we have the longitudinal muscle fibers inside the tubes. Okay, we have now a 4th layer, because I said there are 4. We have said it has the ciliated epithelium, the connective tissue, and the muscle coat. The outer one is the peritoneum, which is the 4th layer, and it is the peritoneum of the broad ligaments that hang over the tubes in that position. So if we are to draw a diagram of the microscopic structure of the tubes, this is how we draw the diagram. My learners, we can draw ciliated epithelium. In case a uterine tube is cut through, what are you able to see with a microscope? Under a microscope, you'll be able to see ciliated epithelium like that is found into the uterine tube. And then we are going to find another layer. We said the other layer is a connective tissue. So this is the other layer, is the connective tissue. It is the next layer after the ciliated epithelium. That is the connective tissue. Then we have a muscle coat. So remember, in anatomy, when you're told to draw muscles, you draw them with lines. So this is a muscle coat of the cervix, like that. Muscle coat, all these ones are muscles. After drawing the muscle coat, then you have to include the outer layer of the uterine tubes. The outer layer of the uterine tubes is that one. And we have called it the peritoneum. So let's try using our diagram. Ideas. We have the peritoneum, then we have the muscle layer, and we said for the muscles we have longitudinal plus circular muscle fibers. Then we said we have the connective tissue. Why connective tissue? When I talk about connective tissue, I mean blood vessels, lymphatics, and then the blood vessels. Then we have the ciliated epithelium here. This is the ciliated what? Ciliated epithelium. So this is the microscopic structure of the microscopic structure of the uterine tubes. Okay, that is it. When we talk about the blood supply to the uterine tubes, we have the uterine arteries. Blood is supplied from the uterine arteries, then they also supply the tubes. Then also some other blood is supplied through the ovarian arteries. So the ovarian arteries also take their blood supply to the uterine tubes. Then venous drainage is into the corresponding veins. And when I talk about the corresponding vein, I mean the either ovarian vein or uterine vein. That is the corresponding vein. Now, the lymphatic drainage of the uterine tubes, we have the lumbar glands and then the innervations by the ovarian plexus. Yes, but we also said that these tubes have to be held in position by ligaments, and we have infundibulopelvic ligaments that help to hold them in position. We also have broad ligaments and others, but those are the main ligaments. Now, finally, we have to look at the functions of the uterine tubes. Yes, it forms a canal through which the ovum and the sperm can pass. What else? Yes, fertilization takes place into the tube and takes place into the ampulla, which is the widened out portion of the uterine tubes. Yes, also commencement of early development of the fertilized ovum takes place in the tube. Commencement of the early development of the fertilized ovum takes place in the tube. What do I mean here? When fertilization takes place, it takes place into the widened out portion of the tube known as ampulla. So when it takes place, the first development, commencement of that development of the zygote that has formed takes place into the tube until the cells now begin dividing and multiplying and differentiating, and then they form structures. But as the structures form, that's when it goes on moving. Before implantation, it's going to take into the tube 7 days. Actually, that's why midwives add 7 days to the weeks of when they are counting weeks of amenorrhea. When a woman says the time they stop their period, they add 7 days. Why? Because the ovum takes 7 days into the tube. Those are the days they add to get the real days that the women are expected to deliver. That makes sense. So lastly, female sterilization takes place in the tube, and when I talk about female sterilization, that is when the tubes are cut, they are ligatured and cut such that there is no more connection between their lumen and the uterus, such that somebody cannot conceive anymore, and the uterus cannot encourage any embedment anymore because there is nothing that will pass through the tube. The tube was cut and blocked, sterilized. Those are the functions of the tubes. And lastly, the relations. What are the relations of the tubes? Anteriorly, we have the intestines and the peritoneal cavity. Posteriorly, we still have the intestines and the peritoneal cavity. Because remember, they are like this, so they are intestines in here, around where they are. And then we have superiorly the peritoneal cavity still, inferiorly the broad ligaments and the ovaries. Then we have laterally the infundibulopelvic ligaments, and then medially, if these are the uterus, medially, if these are the uterine tubes, medially, the relation is the uterus. Let's now look at the important gynecological conditions associated with the uterine tubes such that you can be able to understand them after understanding the anatomy of the tubes. Now, the tube can get narrow, and when it gets narrow, a woman can have ectopic pregnancy. It can become short, and then a woman it can become longer, very long, a long tube, and that can cause ectopic pregnancy. So, this may result into removal of these tubes. But also, the other gynecological condition is cystitis. Since the tubes have a lumen, they can receive infection from the vagina into the cervix, through the cervix and uterus, and then it can get infection, for example, gonorrhea and the other sexual transmitted infections. So they can enter the tube, and then a woman gets salpingitis, which is an infection of the uterine tubes. So I just wanted, I'm not teaching gynecology now, but I want you to attach these conditions to the anatomical parts that we are talking about, such that importantly you clean your vulva very well and make sure that the vulva are clean. You make early detection of the abnormal vaginal discharges such that you don't allow the infections to ascend into the vagina. Yes, those are the gynecological conditions of the vagina. Thank you. Find questions. I can find questions on my email. I'm able to respond. And find questions still on my WhatsApp. I can still respond. And thank you for listening to me. And in the next show up,